Hello and welcome to another edition of Figures from History. Today, the historical figure we're learning about is Napoleon Bonaparte, usually referred to as just Napoleon. Strap in, this is going to be a wild ride. Napoleon was born in 1769 and he died in 1821. That's around 70 years before Rasputin was born, if you've watched that episode. Napoleon lived just before the Victorian times, so he lived in Europe when it was changing a lot. Many countries were beginning to invent lots of new technologies and open factories. He was famous as a military commander and a leader, and he's most well known for invading and conquering massive areas of Europe, spreading chaos wherever he went. How did he end up doing that? Well, he was born on Corsica, which is a beautiful island in the hot Mediterranean. Now, he was actually born to Italian parents, and after Corsica was captured by the French, his family changed their surnames from Buonaparte, which is Italian, to Bonaparte, which is French. As a teen, he left the island of Corsica and did military training on the French mainland, which is the main part of France in a red circle. What next? Well, he finished military school in 1785, and then 4 years later, the French Revolution happened. Well, this is such a big event, we're going to need to go to the idea sphere. So, the French Revolution, it was where a small army disagreed that there should be a French royal family. Basically, in other words, they wanted to get rid of the French royal family. So what happened was they ended up managing to guillotine, which means chop their heads off, Louis XVI and his wife Marie Antoinette, and they took charge. So they actually killed the king and queen and then took charge. Ew. Now, the main guy behind this was a man named Maximilien Robespierre. What a cool name. He also had a brother involved called Augustin Robespierre, who Napoleon became good friends with, as you can see. Okay, so with all this happening, why aren't we doing an episode on Maximilien Robespierre instead of Napoleon? Well, it was a very chaotic time in France when Robespierre was in charge. There was lots of death everywhere. In fact, in part of all the fighting, both Maximilian and Napoleon's BFF, Augustin, were both guillotined themselves, so they also had their heads chopped off. At this time, almost the whole of Europe was at war. Now, whenever anyone is distracted by fighting and being all angry, it's always been a perfect time in history for somebody to sneak in and take control. And we tend to call that a coup, when you're really sneaky and take control. And that's exactly what young Napoleon did. So Napoleon was known as a great military commander. We said that at the beginning. But how come? Well, from 1803 to 1815, he led France in a series of crazy wars known as the Napoleonic Wars. The fact that they're named after him shows how much of a military genius he was, but also a problem to everybody else. Now, his most famous victory was at the Battle of Austerlitz in 1805, where he defeated Austria and Russia. This kind of became his thing, as he went on to defeat them twice more. And an even more cunning thing that he did was to create the continental system. Now, that sounds kind of complicated, right? Nothing to worry about. Basically, he really hated Britain and persuaded loads of other countries to stop sending them stuff by boat. Now, obviously, Britain's an island, so that's kind of a big problem. That meant that Britain lost out on loads of food and clothes and other supplies, and it really, really caused problems. What a mean but clever idea. Well, we've got to talk about his downfall, because everybody gets caught in the end, and it was the same for Napoleon. So it all started when Russia, now, by the way, they didn't have WhatsApp. They had something called diplomacy. You'll learn more about that in secondary school. So when Russia decided to leave the continental system, and I remember that continental system was where they decided all to basically bully Britain, and Russia decided, I've had enough. So this kind of annoyed Napoleon. So he decided to invade Russia. Now, if you've watched the video on Rasputin, you know how big Russia is. It's huge. It's a crazy idea. But anyway, that wouldn't stop Napoleon because he thought he was the best. But what Russia did is they were quite sneaky themselves, and they moved all their people away from the place that was being attacked. So the French troops ended up getting exhausted and kind of lost, and everyone was a bit grumpy. And well, actually, it got a lot worse than just grumpy. And then the winter came. And in Russia, the winter is extremely, extremely cold. The French troops getting stuck in Russia is known as one of the worst mistakes in history. Now, if I let you know that 600,000 troops left France for Russia to try and invade Russia, think about how many died when I tell you that only 100,000 came back. That tells you how much of a disaster this was. Things only got worse for Napoleon after this, though, if you can believe that. Everyone, and I mean everyone, had had enough of him, and they ganged up on him. The Spanish, the Portuguese, the Austrians, the Germans, even though they were known as Prussians at this point, the Swedes, the Russians, everybody. So they managed to outwit him, and they managed to send him to live on this tiny island called Elba. They thought if we put him on this tiny little island, we will see exactly what he's doing, and he can't bother any of us. But being Napoleon, somehow he escaped. Now, he then tried to get back into battling everyone because it was his favourite hobby, but he lost at the Battle of Waterloo to Great Britain, and he was then sent to a place called St. Helena. Now, St. Helena is an island in the middle of the ocean. There was no chance of escaping there. He would live out his last years on the island and die at the age of 51. That's the story of Napoleon. What a crazy life. So here are some questions to have a go at. I'll see you next time. Ooh, I forgot a bit. Now this is why he's a big deal, look. So he caused absolute chaos across Europe. He changed people's thoughts in France about whether to have kings and queens or not. He got everyone in Europe to be afraid of another invasion because he'd done quite a lot of that. There were lots of smaller countries that joined together just in case to be protected. So this is where Italy became one country and where Germany became one country. And Germany was desperate for revenge because France really wound it up. Are your questions. Okay, so enjoy those. You can have a look back because there's loads of information in this episode, quite a lot to remember. So maybe this one's one to have a look back on first. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time.